Hi everybody, I'm going to outline the Asset Fortress Protocol as it's such a very significant component of playing advanced Monopoly. This is the private treasury that every envoy and member of Republic of Old Souls needs in order to play Monopoly at the advanced level. So let's have a look at what's the background, what's going on here in this great big game of Monopoly. So the living men and women, we come into this world, we come into this realm as living, breathing, sentient beings, and what happens is, very shortly afterwards, our mum and dad are coerced into registering a birth certificate. Well, that birth certificate registration creates a person, and the person is an artificial construct. It is a legal entity. It is not a living man or woman. And the living man or woman that is, of course, at the moment of birth certificate registration is a baby, becomes the agent for the birth certificate construct. So the birth certificate construct, the person, the name that you find on the driving license, on the passport, on the bank card, of course on the birth certificate itself, that is the separate entity of this artificial person. Now, the artificial person, in fact, is registered to the world state, the cabal, the government. No matter which country you're in, there will be a birth certificate registration process. So what's going on here is you've got the living man-woman as the agent for the birth certificate construct. The agency makes the living man-woman liable for all of the debts and liabilities and taxes of the birth certificate construct, the person. So it's the agency which is where the trap is. Now, on the Monopoly board itself, which is an artificial Monopoly board, there's nothing of any substance on the Monopoly board itself. The living man-woman can't step on the Monopoly board, can only operate as the agent for the player piece, which is the birth certificate construct, the person, this artificial legal entity. So what's going on here is that the game of Monopoly looks very, very real. It looks like the birth certificate construct, the person, owns assets like houses, cars, businesses, investment portfolios, cryptocurrency, all of these types of things. But in reality, the birth certificate construct is a debtor entity itself. It is a debtor entity and it's also registered to the cabal, the crown, the state, the world state, if you like. So it doesn't really ever have any true rightful ownership of anything. The living man-woman is its agent, and any liabilities that are incurred on the Monopoly Board of Commerce itself are underwritten by the living man or woman as the surety, as the underwriter, as the source of all of the signature credit, which we'll come back to in a moment. So on this artificial Monopoly board, everything appears to be, not everything, but many things appear to be assets. You've got bank accounts which appear to have positive balances in them. You've got investment accounts that appear to have positive balances in them. You've got the value of houses, the value of cars, the value of anything that you could add up and say is a asset. Well, in fact, in reality, all of those so-called assets are actually negatives on the Monopoly board. They're all negatives, they're all debt, because everything on the Monopoly board is a debt. And it's basically a great big ledger. So you've got the living men and women that are not on the Monopoly board. They provide the signature energy, the signature credit that runs on the Monopoly board itself. The living men and women are the agents for the birth certificate construct, which is on the Monopoly board. Everything on that Monopoly board is actually a negative value. It's difficult to get your head around it, but it's the reality of it. Because everything on the Monopoly board is operating in bankruptcy, following the House Joint Resolution 192 of 1933. It's all in bankruptcy. And the bankruptcy trustee is the United States Treasury. So in any bankruptcy, there are debtors and creditors. So you have the debtors, which is all of the entities on the Monopoly Board itself, and then you have the creditors. Well, the creditors are the living men and women. So you have this basically two realms. You have the realm of the substance, which is where the living men and women operate, and then you have the artificial realm, which is the Monopoly Board itself. Now, the Asset Fortress Protocol is a mechanism that has been designed by me to be able to play Monopoly at an advanced level. The problem with the person is, that's the birth certificate construct, is that it is always going to be a debtor and it's always going to be liable for anything that it does on the Monopoly Board itself. Taxes, fines, debts, all of those things, all very egregious things that get a lot of people into difficulty. Digital ID of the person, of the birth certificate construct, prison sentences, all of those things are all basically against the birth certificate construct. Dragging the agent in, which is the living man or woman. So in order to play advanced Monopoly, one of the ways to do that, I think probably the best way to do it, is to create a separate player piece on the Monopoly Board itself. Well, that is a Asset Fortress Protocol. It is an international grantor trust. It sits on the Monopoly Board, and if you look at how it's been put together, the grantor is the birth certificate construct. The trustee of the Asset Fortress Protocol is the birth certificate construct. That's the person, this artificial entity. The beneficiary of the Asset Fortress Protocol is the living man or woman. So that's where your separation is. Now, the creation of the Asset Fortress Protocol creates this new player piece that goes onto the Monopoly Board. It can operate in this great big game of Monopoly, but it can operate for the benefit of the living man woman without state interference. It's significantly important because the Asset Fortress Protocol can open a bank account. It can hold the title to property, to investments, to businesses. It can have all of those titles within, under its control through the fact that it is an entity with its own jurisdiction. As a foreign alien to the United States. That's what they actually refer to it as. So now you have the opportunity to move assets into the Asset Fortress Protocol, where the cabal, the state, the world state, the government has no control. It's extremely efficient for privacy because the Asset Fortress Protocol can have its own bank account, which is, of course, necessary for running a treasury. So it has its own bank account. It can operate on the Monopoly Board of Commerce separately from the person, that birth certificate construct that's reporting everything to the cabal, the government, the world state. The Asset Fortress Protocol doesn't have to report. It can operate a bank account. It can receive all of the signature credit recoupments from the 1099 OID Clifford Protocol process. It can receive all those recoupments of signature credit, which is taxes, and it can spend out of its private treasury bank account and recoup back because the signature is still being used to spend and recoup. Spending is issuing new negotiable instruments and recouping back. So the private treasury, if you imagine a Monopoly Board, is sitting on the Monopoly Board as a new player piece. It doesn't have to report to the government, the state, the cabal. It can operate its own banking. It can hold its own assets. And it can operate completely privately under a trust indenture. And it can operate without digital ID. It can operate by spending and recouping. It can hold all the assets on the Monopoly Board in privacy, and that's basically what it's all about, the Asset Fortress Protocol. So let's whiz through this document. The core structure, the grantor and the trustee, that is the legal person. Some people call it the straw man. It is the birth certificate construct. The beneficiary is always going to be the living man, woman. It's always going to be the living. That's the true creditor. That is the provider of the energy that runs on this artificial monopoly board. The trust entity itself is a body corporate. It is a 98 series international grantor trust. So it sits internationally. It's not part of any existing country. It is international. It is foreign to the United States, a foreign alien. What you'll get in the trust pack is the indenture, you'll get the appointment of the trustee, which of course is the birth certificate construct, the person, the certificate of trust, minutes, notes and minutes, banking mandate for the private treasury, because the Asset Fortress protocol has its own private treasury bank account. A schedule of assets. Well, if you're going to hold assets in the Asset Fortress protocol, then there has to be a schedule. And also successor trustees, which means that when the living man, woman dies, there can be a continuation of this trust, which is extremely helpful for avoiding the taxes on probate taxes or death taxes. Now, the agency trap is solved through the Asset Fortress protocol. Remember the agencies between the living man, woman, and the birth certificate construct, the person. Well, what we've done here by setting up the Asset Fortress, we have created a separation where the living man, woman is now the beneficiary of the Asset Fortress protocol, is no longer operating as the surety for the person, the birth certificate construct, is now operating as creditor and beneficiary of a separate player piece, which is the Asset Fortress protocol. Now, one of the key elements of the process is that the correction of standing and status needs to be addressed by the envoy protocol, because that is going to create a declaration of status and standing where the living man, woman becomes the general executor of the birth certificate construct. That's the person, that birth certificate registered entity. The living man, woman through the envoy protocol becomes the general executor of the person, because the person, the birth certificate construct, is a decedent estate. So it needs an executor, it needs a general executor. So the envoy protocol is going to create a proper standing and status correction, a declaration of status and standing correction, and also create the living man, woman as an envoy of the Republic of Old Souls, which of course is a ministry. So it becomes protected under the fact that the ministry is a religious order, if you like. So it has that religious protection. It doesn't mean that the living man, woman has to practice a religion, but the belief of the ministry of the Republic of Old Souls is to operate in peace, operate as the creditor, play monopoly at the advanced level as the creditor in peace without causing harm to others. That is all that basically the Republic of Old Souls believes in. The envoy belief, the envoy, the mission of each envoy is to operate in peace, operate as the creditor, operate as the beneficiary to the Asset Fortress protocol, and operate without causing harm to others. That is the belief system and the religion, if you like, of the Republic of Old Souls. So becoming an envoy is just believing in those things, taking up the position of the general executor. That's the office of the general executor over the decedent estate of the person. That makes a difference when it comes to the creation of the Asset Fortress protocol. So now you've got legal versus equitable title. Basically, in the game of Monopoly, you've got legal title, you've got equitable title. Now, if it is possible, it's not always possible, you can move the fee simple or legal title into the Asset Fortress protocol. It has to be looked at case by case. It's not as easy as it sounds. There can be difficulties with it. But there are some assets that can be moved in to the Asset Fortress protocol with the legal title. But if you can't move the legal title because it's very difficult in some cases to do that, you can always move the equitable title in. The equitable title is usage. That is how you use the asset. So the beneficiary, living man, woman of the Asset Fortress Protocol, if the asset is transferred into the Asset Fortress Protocol and the equitable title of the asset is now sitting under the Asset Fortress Protocol, that means that the beneficiary of the Asset Fortress Protocol can use the asset, use the car, use the house, use the property, whatever it is, they have usage through the equitable title. The financial engine of the Asset Fortress Protocol is its ability to spend and recoup. It's going to receive the signature credit tax recoupments from the 1099 OID grant or trust that's filed. The 1099 OID, if you want to understand that more or comprehend that more, I've just recorded a video on signature credit. Should it win the Nobel Prize? There is a video I've just recorded on that. It explains this whole process. You can find it in various places. It'll probably also be on YouTube and places like that. If you want to find it in the platform, in Telegram, on YouTube, it'll be on Ross Media, etc., etc. Lots of places to find it. So what's going on here is that you've got a situation where signature credit is being recouped from the age of majority, from the age of 18, 21, on bank payments, because they're all signature credit recoupment category. You've got mortgages, loans, credit cards. You've got the deduction of from the wages, or if you've ever been paid wages, there is a tax deduction. All of that is signature credit, is available for signature credit recoupment. Once you've recouped that it comes to, first of all, to a 1099 OID grant or trust, which has got a professional trustee. It's got a professional tax reporting officer as a tax preparer, filing all those tax returns, receiving signature credit tax rebate to the 1099 OID grant or trust. Then a grant is made from the 1099 OID grant or trust to the Asset Fortress Protocol, that is now received 100% of the recoupments and is going to then spend and recoup in cycles going forward. New signature energy pushed out, recoup back, goes in cycles. Now, in order to, and that's all about the OID, it's all in my other video, the signature credit recoupment, should it win the Nobel Prize. This is all the lawful references of the signature credit recoupment, House Joint Resolution 192, Bills of Exchange Act, UCC, IRS Publication 1212, Revenue Procedure 2002-26, Treasury Regulation 601503. All of that process there are the lawful references that make the Clifford Protocol, the recoupment of signature credit, completely lawful. So what you've got then is you've got the Asset Fortress Protocol receiving 100% of the recoupment of signature credit from all of that signature credit from the age of 18, 21 onwards. You've then got the donation to the Republic of Old Souls and making a donation. The Asset Fortress is going to make a donation to finance the Republic of Old Souls as a sovereign nation, and that donation, of course, is signature credit, and it can be recouped in the next cycle of recoupment. So there's actually no real cost for the donation to the to the Republic of Old Souls to finance the Freedom Plan, which is a significant part of the sovereign nation of the Republic of Old Souls. And then, of course, the Asset Fortress Protocol is operating as the private treasury. It can spend and recoup with its own bank account, and meaning that the living man, woman as its beneficiary can enjoy all of the benefits of playing on the monopoly board itself, but without having to perhaps go out and create economic activity, working, running a business, trading something. It will have those perpetual spend and recoupment cycles from the Asset Fortress as its private treasury. Now, for those people that are worried about digital ID, The digital ID only applies to the person, to the birth certificate construct. It doesn't apply to the Asset Fortress Protocol. So the Asset Fortress Protocol can now operate independently of the birth certificate construct, internationally and independently, spending and recouping, holding its assets with no digital ID problem whatsoever. Banking, the Asset Fortress Protocol will have its own bank account. It can have more than one. It will have a debit card, credit card, sorry, not a credit card, a debit card for its use on the Monopoly board in the name of the Asset Fortress Protocol, which of course can be the name or very similar to the name on the birth certificate. That birth certificate construct, whatever that name is, Ian Clifford Trust will have an Ian Clifford debit card, Ian Clifford Trust debit card. Transferring assets in, well, it depends on what the assets are, but there is a whole process that we've developed for transferring assets into the Asset Fortress Protocol. So you've got transfer of property, transfer of businesses, transfer of stocks, shares, transfer of cryptocurrency. Anything that has a title to it can be transferred in. And there is a process that the Republic of Old Souls will offer to all of the Asset Fortress Protocol holders for the transfer of assets. And then you've got tax. Well, the Asset Fortress Protocol itself is an independent jurisdiction. It has an independent jurisdiction internationally. There's no tax reporting for the Asset Fortress Protocol. Then there's also no requirement to report the Asset Fortress Protocol to the state that you're operating in, the government, the world state, the cabal at all. There's no requirement for reporting. And this section here is all about taxes. It's a foreign trust. It has its own jurisdiction. You can read that section there. And then we get into questions and answers. Well, I'll let you read these, but I'll just pick out a few. The Asset Fortress Protocol itself will have if you are interested in this and you're doing this, when I say the birth certificate construct is the grantor and trustee. So you have complete control of the Asset Fortress Protocol. You provide a mandate for an officer of the Republic of Old Souls to operate the donation of the agreed donation to the Republic of Old Souls. That's the only mandate that they have, is the donation side. Everything else is 100% under your control. If you want to set up the bank account, there is a cost involved. When I say it's a cost, it's not really a cost because it's a zero-sum game. To set up a bank account for the Asset Fortress Protocol is $1,000. That will be deducted from, or it will be a donation. So you receive the signature credit recoupments into the Asset Fortress. You pay the Asset Fortress makes the donation it's the agreed percentage donation to finance the sovereign nation. It will also make a donation for the setup of the bank account, and it will also make a donation for any assets that you've transferred in. 1% of the value of the assets is funded to the Republic of Old Souls as a donation, and then recouped in the next cycle of recoupments by the Asset Fortress Protocol. So there isn't really any cost at all in the longer run. And you as in the living man woman, as the agent for the birth certificate construct, have complete control over the trust. Is it complicated to run the Asset Fortress Protocol? I don't think it is. It's just like what you're already doing is operating the person. You're the agent for the person. That's not difficult. You become the beneficiary of the Asset Fortress Protocol. That isn't difficult. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. I will be doing further interviews with Andy Benson on this and probably going into it in more detail.